really what advocacy is at its core is education. And that's education for lawmakers as well as for operators. A lot of the rules and regs that we see either implemented or proposed come from kind of this lack of education that's been that states have been able to control in the industry or produce. And so associations are filling in that role by hosting conferences, educational webinars.
Welcome to RevLabs by PriceLabs.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of RevLabs Pulse on RevLabs by PriceLabs, where we unpack what's happening in the STR market. I'm your host, Kyle Driskell, and today I'm super excited to be joined by Julie Marks, who's the founder and executive director of VTSTRA, the Vermont Short-Term Rental Alliance, the executive director of the Right to Rent Collaborative, as well as being the owner and manager of Homestead Hospitality in Vermont. Julie, welcome to the show. I know I've done a little bit of an introduction for you, but if you don't mind, why don't you give the audience a little intro of yourself as well?
Hi, Kyle. Thanks for having me. I mean, you really summed it up. I have gotten myself deep into the vacation rental advocacy realm with VTSTRA and most recently the Right to Rent Collaborative. And of course, it all stems from my love of hosting and my desire to have that freedom and ability to rent properties as I please in order to fit my lifestyle and support my family. So I'm very passionate about vacation rental advocacy, and I'm really excited to talk with you more about that today.
Absolutely. I'm really excited about it. And for the audience, VTSTRA is specific to Vermont, and it's been an alliance that's been put together over the past couple of years. They're doing great work in Vermont. Julie, if you don't care, can you expand a little bit on what the Right to Rent Collaborative is?
Sure. So, well, VTSTRA, was founded in Vermont. We're a statewide association, and the Right to Rent Collaborative really the concept came out of a realization essentially that associations on the ground level, whether they were regional to a specific city or county or covering an entire state geographic like Vermont, there was a lack of industry support going into the work that was being done to protect these businesses. And, leaders like myself were finding that we were spending a lot of our time and energy fundraising. And whether that was, the painfully slow process of trying to attract individual members to pay $100, $200 here and there to support the work that you're doing, and the lobbyists and the attorneys that you're hiring, which costs tens of thousands of dollars, it wasn't really keeping pace. And so, I started my kind of journey into meeting more industry partners by starting to attend conferences and events and again, spending a lot of time and energy and our resources soliciting donations and contributions so that I could keep up the work that I was doing to advocate and try to protect vacation owner rights. And it just felt so inefficient. And the more associations that came onto the scene, the more vendors were being asked and squeezed from all directions. And it just seemed like, isn't there a simpler way to do this? Isn't there a more efficient way that we could pool industry resources and distribute them as needed to associations who are doing the work on the ground? And so that's kind of where the concept of Right to Rent came in, was developing a mechanism for pooled funding that is specifically and exclusively intended for capacity building at the association level in every state. There's nothing unique about what's happening in Vermont. It's happening in every single state. and the conversations and the accusations and the misinformation is identical in every market, regardless how different the market is. It's fascinating. And so it does not make any sense or serve anybody any good to have associations operating that aren't connected and aren't collaborating together, because we are all facing the same issues and testing various solutions. And the better connected we are as association leaders, the more effective, our messaging and our advocacy will be nationwide. And so that's really the backbone and the idea behind the Right Trend Collaborative is pooling resources to grow a 51 state wide network of associations that are operating together.
That's amazing, and I love what you're working on in Vermont. I've got a friend working on a similar initiative in Missouri, and the collaboration is so important. Shout out to Miss Tyann, doing great job with Nova. But this is so important. And where I live, I'm in Tennessee. I don't believe we have these being built out yet. Maybe I'm incorrect, but if you're listening to this and you're not a part of association, get with your property management friends, start building this out. Reach out to Julie. You'll get her contact information at the end of this. But there's so much power to collaboration when it comes to fighting these regulations. Julie, what really over the past like 3-4 years or so, how have you seen regulation shift? Like, what are some of those trends that you mentioned that they're not just specific to Vermont? We're seeing them all across the board.
Yeah, well, I mean, the uptick in regulations is the genesis of VTSTRA. We didn't just decide to form an association one day for fun. It was purely in self-defense against regulations that we were being introduced for, in our situation, at the city level and then at the state level, right immediately on top of that. And so recognizing that especially when the pandemic hit and there was a lot of pressure on the housing market and the cost of building changed, and the whole country still is feeling this pressure from the cost of living and the cost of housing. Short-term rentals became a very easy and front-running target for trying to address that problem. We have done a lot of research, and there's a lot of data that counters that argument, but that doesn't stop local politicians and elected officials from trying to take a stab at whatever the easiest solution they think is going to be. And so short-term rentals have found themselves at the main talking point in so many city council meetings, select board meetings, and even in state legislatures now, as a way to either fund housing initiatives or reduce the size of the market under the guise of creating more affordable housing. This is, again, like, not unique to Vermont. It's happening everywhere, and it's accelerating. And so if you're a property manager and you're not represented by an association, chances are these conversations are happening without you or anybody representing you in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing the regulations really evolve. Like, you can look at things geopolitically and say they go that way, but really it's the emerging markets, anywhere where it seems like, hey, there's a lot of money to be made through taxation or anything like that. So if you're talking to somebody that's in a market right now that maybe isn't ultra regulated, we kind of know it's going to eventually come as the market matures. So what advice would you give to somebody that's in a market right now that's not a part of association, maybe doesn't have crazy regulations right now, but inevitably 2 to 3 years now, they'll probably be there?
I would say don't follow VTSTRA's footsteps and wait until you're reacting. Start now, be proactive. And the primary purpose and focus in those early days when you're not fighting a fight or putting out a fire is to start building really good and trusted relationships with lawmakers and with other industry association leaders. For example, we have now very strong and close relationships with our DMOs, our tourism department, our housing agencies, so that we do understand the data, the housing data that's real. So building those partnerships with the real estate associations, your chamber of commerce, all of those partners will come in very, very handy when you do have a bill or an ordinance that is, that you want to provide input to and influence at some level.
And we can't do any of these things without funding. And you really mentioned that when we were talking about the right to rent. What advice would you give to somebody in terms of getting that initial step going? Where should they start at to look at getting some funding or building out one of these organizations?
So first off, I would recommend that property managers of any size can enroll right now in the Right to Rent program. This is a $2 donation per reservation that you complete, and it's synced and automated through your PMS. We have currently have integrations established and active with 3 PMSs, Hostfully, OwnerRez, and Hospitable, with more coming online in 2026. So definitely that is the best way for a property manager to start contributing on a regular basis and in an amount that won't hurt your bottom line. But that then feeds into a pool of funding, again, that's available for associations that are starting up, who need help, that initial kickstart grant to get registered, to pay those initial fees. And then further throughout the growth cycle of the organization, those funds remain available for when you need to launch your first membership drive, or hire your lobbyist, or hire an executive director. And so that it's a feedback loop that really requires all hands on deck and everybody pitching in, to the amount that's proportionate to what they receive back out of the industry. So that's the real starting point, is getting involved in the Right to Rent program with that $2 donation, and then returning back to the collaborative when you need those funds in your community. They'll be there for you.
That's awesome. I love to hear that you all have that initiative going. I want to focus back a little bit more on VTSTRA real quick. Now, you all have been in operations for a few years now. Obviously, you're dealing with lobbyists, legislation, and all that. How are you all kind of tracking what's happening with legislation and regulatory changes, things that are being considered before you all actually get a say in these things? How are you all kind of monitoring those?
Yeah, so we are really fortunate to work with a great lobbying firm here locally who represents us in the State House every day. So they are our ears and eyes in the building and in the hallway and at lunch, and where all the conversations are happening, where I can physically not be all the time. And that has really been the secret sauce for VTSTRA, is having a really good lobbyist partner and political strategist to help facilitate building those relationships with different lawmakers, keeping an eye on what bills are being introduced when, the makeup of different committees and who's on them and what their priorities are and what districts they represent. All of this kind of insight and insider information has been absolutely critical. I can't stress that enough. That was really step one for us, was find a good political strategist that can be our lobbyist in the state house.
That's amazing. And correct me if I'm wrong, obviously lobbyists are going to cost a little bit of money. They've got a price tag attached to them. That's why these fundraising things are so important to you. Having that right person in that position is key. Again, going back to my experience with Tyan in Missouri, their lobbyist does a great job with them as well. And if you don't have that person kind of at the forefront, who knows what you're missing out on. So love to hear that. What are some things that VTSTRA is doing to promote responsible hosting practices? Just from things that I've heard when it comes to regulations, that's a big talking point. Like, hey, we want to cut out the bad actors. We want to make sure there's no human trafficking. All of those types of things happening. What are some things that VTSTRA is doing right now to promote responsible hosting?
Yeah, I'm really glad you bring this up, because really what advocacy is at its core is education, and that's education for lawmakers as well as for operators. A lot of the rules and regs that we see either implemented or proposed come from kind of this lack of education that's been that states have been able to control in the industry or produce. And so associations are filling in that role by hosting conferences, educational webinars. I mean, the creation of all the industry podcasts, such as this one, like there's a growing level of or a growing amount of resources out there for operators now, that are being largely driven by, vendors and local associations. And the more that we can invite our regulators into those events and allow them to understand and see the education that is going on, as well as setting up mechanisms for hosts who are receiving these training programs and education to be recognized for their commitment to responsible hosting, for their compliance with fire safety code and standards. These are the things that we need to better support and exemplify in operators to build that trust and understanding between government and the industry. So, we in Vermont, we host an annual conference. Our conference this year is coming up at the end of March in Stowe, Vermont, and it will be very interesting and timely, because the community of Stowe, which is our largest vacation rental market and our most iconic tourist destination, is currently proposing a ban on non-owner occupied vacation rentals. And so amidst that conversation and debate, we will be hosting a 2-day educational conference where we do bring in housing and tourism experts, as well as so many great industry partners to do education around safety and insurance and, of course, the lawful business operations. We've got the Vermont Small Business Law Center coming. So we have a lot of really great training and education coming up soon in Vermont, and we strive to do that every year.
Your conference, unfortunately I've never been able to attend your conference because my wonderful teammate Monique is right in the heart of Vermont. She's got an A-frame there, so Monique's always going to the VTSTRA events. Love that she's there. If you get a chance and you're going to VTSTRA's event, stop by our booth, see Monique, see Kendra, my teammate as well. But I absolutely love what you all do. Education focus is so huge right now, especially as compliance things are changing, as regulations are just kind of shifting. What is something that VTSTRA does outside of this conference to communicate what's happening right now? And I know you all are great at proactive communication. This is what our lobbyists are working on, all that. What are some things that you're doing to communicate that outside of just having your conference set up?
Yeah, well, one of the kind of most incredible things that I've observed since starting VTSTRA was just how much of a community resource we've become, and it never existed before. And so, it's almost hard to believe or hard to know, like, where were people getting their information 5 years ago before they had someone to call or email? I every day am fielding general questions from the public, from different agencies, from the media. You know, my ability to now attend different events around the states and be a part of conversations, whether it's the economic, our local economic conference, the relationship and status of what's going on with Vermont landlord laws, all of these kind of different sub-industries that, of course, touch each other. They're all interconnected, but being able to just regularly show up and be a presence and be a part of those conversations, again, in our business economy, in our housing economy, in our tourism conversations, all of these things VTSTRA now is a part of. And that, as just a general awareness and vacation rentals being a part of the conversation, is just essential. And it's kind of bonkers that it hasn't been that way, since the dawn of the industry 50, 60 years ago.
That's great. So going into 2026, we've got your conference coming up. Now that we've got the regulations coming in stow, is there anything that's kind of on the forefront outside of those for 2026 for VTSTRA? Anything else that you're hyper focusing on, or anything that you're prepping for 2027 with?
I mean, we will always have a job to do when it comes to defending vacation rental rights. It seems that we are continuing to be a target for additional taxes as a source of revenue, which is also ironic when communities are trying to shrink the market and the state is trying to grow their revenue based on the market. I'm not quite sure how that is going to play out in altogether, but we will always be engaging in those conversations. I will be actually in our state house next week testifying on a property tax reclassification where short-term rentals are trying to be targeted once again for higher property taxes. But really, it's just about continuing to build those relationships and continuing to invite the community in to our world. The more that we can engage locally on the ground, the more homeowners and property managers that we can bring into our association and our membership, the wider visibility we have, the more normalized our presence is. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding from the general public about this industry, largely because it's very silent and almost invisible. We need to change that and not be invisible so that the community understands and trusts their vacation rental partners and neighbors and recognize the values that they do bring to our towns and our cities, while also being able to hold each other accountable, because we do want to weed out those bad actors. We do want to hold anybody who's operating to a standard that can be trusted, and so we need to really stay focused on bringing more people into our association and elevating that standard for hospitality in the vacation rental world.
That's awesome. You started our conversation earlier by saying that you loved hospitality, like that was a passion for you. I 100% heard that during the course of this interview. It was great to hear not only you talking about, hey, we're going to take care of homeowners and property managers and make sure they're taken care of, but you're also talking about taking care of the guests with that as well, making sure that we are working towards a standardized, path forward with short-term rentals. So loved hearing that. Julie, it was so nice to talk to you. If anybody wants to reach out to you and get in touch, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm not a huge social media fan. So if you find me on Facebook or LinkedIn, it might be a few weeks until I see that message. But I am 100% addicted to my email. So email me director at VTSTRA.org. Or if you have a right to rent question, Julie at r2rcollaborative.org.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again, Miss Julie, for joining us. Congratulations on everything that you're doing. You are setting the rest of the U.S. up for success with what you're working on. So on behalf of us down here in Tennessee, where we don't really have these things going and people need to build them up, I thank you for kind of being at the forefront of getting these organizations set up. To our listeners, absolutely. To our listeners, feel free to hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, you've got the video, you get to see me and Julie here. If you're listening on Spotify, you don't get to see us, but hey, just hit that follow button, subscribe to RevLabs by PriceLabs for more conversations. We're going to be talking about scaling revenue, scaling operations, and just growth in general. On behalf of RevLabs by PriceLabs, I'm Kyle, and thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Adios.